All right, so yet despite a higher level of skepticism fashionable among the intelligentsia than among many others, ancient historians were not products of the radical Enlightenment. So what does that look like? What don't they bring in, or what do they bring in, or what positives or what negatives do they bring in here? They could not simply expect all readers to disbelieve all claims of supernatural activity without argument. The majority of ancient historians were critical of some reports while accepting the possibilities of others. That is, they did not a priori decide all claims of the paranormal events to be either authentic or inauthentic. We do not, for that reason, reject their authenticity as historians or the authenticity of other reports they offer. And so again, when people want to make claims against the Bible and the claims therein, something that we do is point to the tales of Caesar, and we say, look, did Caesar Augustus live? Yes, and we know a lot about him. Well, we know a lot about him because the earliest known evidences we have of him written down are something like 500, 1,000 years after he lived, and they also contain miracle claims. So why do we give the benefit of the doubt for someone like Julius Caesar, who has all these things and farther away than Jesus of Nazareth, whose writings are much closer and also have these miracle claims?
Yeah, so what he does now is kind of moves away from this examining the skeptical stance of some of the ancient historians to other positions with regard to their idea of what, these stories were doing. So this section he calls ancient plausibility structures. And he says, certainly not all ancient intellectuals were skeptical of supernatural phenomena. Thus, for example, Stoics, despite their disdain for immoral mythologies, were known for defending the gods and divination, right? And likewise, thinkers influenced by the Pythagoreans tradition clearly affirmed tangible divine supernatural activities. So again, not all ancient intellectuals were skeptical of supernatural phenomena. He says, while some historians were more inventive than others, we would not, for example, suspect Tacitus of having merely invented the reports of the signs attributed to Vespucian, whatever their historical origin. And so he believes that this same principle then should also hold true for early Christian reports. Celsus and other later critics of Christians sought not to deny, notice, their miracles, but to challenge the value that these phenomena by questioning their source, like sorcery or the social status of Christians.
Right.
So, Celsus didn't necessarily deny the miracles, but he questioned and challenged the value of the miracles by saying, but look at the source of it. Right? Sorcery or the social structure of the Christians.
Yeah. This religion of slaves and women is what the claim against Christianity was. So they can be just dismissed.
What we would call the genetic fallacy, right? Right. Looking at the source of the argument instead of the argument itself. Yeah, exactly. So we can just dismiss it because this is just the wanton wishes of slaves and women. Because of them, yeah.
All right, well, how about our good friend Josephus? Well, writing for a more Hellenistic audience sometimes follows the cautious conventions of his Greek contemporaries, adding a non-committal remark after reporting biblical miracles. And again, Josephus is a Jew, and so he probably, more than likely, believed these type of miracles. And so he's trying to tell the story, tell his people's story nonetheless, for a particular audience. And he seems pretty fair in his writings, including when we get to the description of the man that we care about, Jesus. But nevertheless, though, so he does things like plays down Elijah's miracles and some other miracles. But nevertheless, Josephus did believe in miracles and wanted his audience to do the same. That was one of the points that he was probably tasked with and took great care about with his writing. One of the gospel writers was also a Hellenistic historian, yet shares the same essentially Jewish theological frame of reference held by the other gospel writers. Luke, who writes for Christians who believes in a powerful and historically active deity, is not at all reticent to report miracles. In fact, he tends to go out and interview these people that he doesn't have a direct eyewitness of himself being, but how does he know the things that Mary witnessed? Well, because he went out and talked to Mary and talked about them. And so he's not, against telling about these things like the virgin birth, because not only does he know his audience, not only does he understand that they believe in this Isaiah prophecy, But also, he's a fellow believer, along with his fellow traveler Paul, in believing that Jesus came as a fulfillment of those things, with the ultimate miracle claim of the resurrection.
Yeah.
All right, so Luke, however, is not sensitive enough to some critics' skepticism that distinguishes his own claim from Jesus' resurrection for more incredible popular stories by citing proofs like Acts 1:3, and acknowledging that some find this claim unbelievable, like in Acts 26:8. So he is also saying, listen, audience, this might sound really, really weird, but here's the truth of it. So if all of society is believing that miracles are possible and they happen all the time and the gods are just here and there and everywhere, well, why couch this in a say of like, this might sound weird, but, and so that's one of the things where we need to kind of have a proper understanding of what people thought, how historians both told stories and also collected stories here. And even in the Bible itself, the miracle claims are seen as a weird thing that happens.
That's one way to put it, right?
Yes. Very sacrilegious way, probably.
Yeah, that's right. And notice he says here that Luke is saying that he's providing proofs, right? So he knows that it's a weird thing, right? And so he has to give proofs for it, right? And he acknowledges that, some find these types of claims unbelievable. He quotes Acts 26:8 there as a source.